Good evening and welcome to Special Assignment. I'm Ashraf Garda. Tonight we bring you a gripping story of poverty in our country. Late last year, 4 small children aged between 2 and 9 years old walked for more than 10 kilometers in search of food in the village of Verdwaal in the northwest province. The post-mortem results show that the children died of hunger and thirst after walking for many kilometers under the scorching heat. In reality, what ultimately killed them is poverty, a sad and unnecessary death in a country such as ours. Senior producer Frank Farrow took a journey to Verdwaal to investigate the story behind this story.
A sad farewell for little Mapule and Sibengo Mupele. These 2 young lives were cut short by poverty. Their mother cannot believe the fate that has befallen the family. Her grandchildren were buried earlier, having suffered the same misfortune.
The
children have no birth certificates. The only evidence that they ever existed are their death certificates. The post-mortem revealed that the children did not have a proper meal for several days.
It's unfortunate that the 4 children passed on without those birth certificates, but I think it's a wake-up call for all of us.
Their deaths could have been prevented, but with no documents, they couldn't access social grants, which are meant to benefit poverty-stricken communities. Sadly, their situation is very similar to a number of rural areas across the country, where millions of children go to bed hungry without enough food to eat. Martha Mupele has lived through apartheid and democracy. Poverty and years of hardship have taken their toll on her well-being. The family lives in Verdwaal, an impoverished region of the northwest. Martha's daughter Elizabeth says the family have been struggling to get ID documents for some time. The family tried to get IDs, but differences in the spelling of their surname prevented them from getting the documents. Ironically, Martha's deceased parents had IDs. With no means to fend for the family, she's dependent on seasonal work at a local farm. Before the children went missing, Martha's daughter Elizabeth had earlier gone to look for her in the hope that she'd get some food to feed the children. Weak and starving, the children could no longer contain their hunger. They soon decided to follow their mother and grandmother. The young children walked through an open gate, across a ploughed field, to a farmyard 10 kilometers away. A daunting trip with tragic consequences.
We can confirm that we received information about the missing kids after their mother came to report at the police station. And from there we went out to start the search. We were reported that 4 kids were missing. And we sent our dog unit and all our members to go and start with the search. The search started on a Monday, which was on the 25th, and the kids were found, the first 2 kids were found on Thursday, which was the 28th. And the state in which they were found, when the day they went missing, it was a very hot day. And because of the heat, as the post-mortem confirms as well, that the dehydration in their bodies, and also I think the number of days they spent without food out in the field. was a major contributor into their death. And it was then part of the very sad situation that started to surround this area, because we had the cloud of the other 2 kids that were still missing. We had to work around the clock to find them, and the following Thursday, with the help of a farmer, Mr. Mayor, we were able to locate the other 2 kids who were found in a very serious state, where their bodies were highly decomposed. And it is also the same confirmation by the post-mortem, dehydration and also hunger.
This is local farmer Louis Meyer. He made the gruesome discovery on his farm.
It was very tragic to find them, because they were already in quite a late state of decomposition. What was interesting, though, they had removed their shoes, put their shoes next to each other. Little girl had taken off her jersey and folded it nicely and packed it. And then they lied down in the cradle position, and that's the way we found them.
And if losing a child in these tragic circumstances is not enough, the parents now also face charges of child neglect.
The deputy public prosecutor will make a decision at the provincial level as to the merits of the case, whether we have a case to lock the mother of the kids, or there is no case to lock the mother, out of the statements that we have and out of the reports that the social workers will give. It is to prove the evidence of neglect.
After the tragedy, social welfare flooded their home with food. Suddenly, the family had plenty to eat. Sadly, this meal came a little too late. Could the children still be alive today had the authorities responded earlier?
That is why we do this household profiling that assists us as the department to identify each and every household that there are challenges. I think what happened here in Verdwaal, the department did a community profiling, not household. Maybe if we did a household, we could have detected that we have problems here.
Elizabeth is still trying to come to terms with the loss of her 2 young children. She's now 7 months pregnant, but the thought of bringing another child into the world is worrying the young mother.
So how mama can get past
The Social Welfare Department says Home Affairs visited the family prior to the incident, but they failed to detect that there were children living at home.
The report that we got from Home Affairs was that they did visit this family. They've applied for late registration for Elizabeth and Martha, but the report we got is that Martha and Elizabeth did not disclose that there were children here. Otherwise, Home Affairs says that they could have organized a birth certificate for them.
Meanwhile, the Human Rights Commission has launched an investigation to establish if there was any bureaucratic bungling on the part of Home Affairs. A profiling by the Department of Social Welfare in Verdwaal made a shocking discovery when they found that thousands of impoverished people were living in the same circumstances.
From the profiling that was done by the Department of Social Development, there was an estimation that there could be about 5,000 people in this community. Now, out of that 5,000, having looked at this community, almost 80% of them could be qualifying. So we're talking of big numbers.
Government has now begun documenting the people, but the situation for this poverty-stricken community is not about to change anytime soon, because they cannot afford the required fees to pay for their documents.
To get an ID document costs you in the region of about 140 Rand. So people will have the option, do I give me 140 Rand for an ID document, or do I take this 140 Rand and buy food for my family?
Coming up next, feeding the hungry in Verdwaal.
Charity organization Gift of the Givers were the first to respond after reports of the children's death. They came from everywhere, women, children and the elderly, and the long queues under the scorching sun became unbearable for some.
What we found is that the people in this community is really poor. Poor meaning they've got no food, a basic necessity where everybody's right is to have a plate of food, but at the moment these people don't even have a plate of food.
This community is a microcosm of many societies in our country, where poverty and hopelessness has bred other social ills such as alcoholism and crime.
Most of the crimes are liquor-related crimes where people drink alcohol. I think it's because of joblessness and other issues. And after drinking, then you would have your issues of your contact crime, where we talk about sometimes rape, sometimes your assault, GBH, and sometimes murders. But all of it, when you trace it back, it's all liquor-related crimes.
These RDP houses are signs of government service delivery, but most households here don't have piped water or electricity. After the children's deaths, community stakeholders had a meeting to discuss how they could overcome the issues affecting the people in this community.
Verdwaal has changed, I think, since after 1994 it was affected tremendously because we used to have a village or few stands where mostly they were farmers, they were plowing the field around there, so the level of poverty was not high. But since after 1994 we had a challenge where people moved in from farm areas to eviction. Then we had to accommodate them. Most of them, they are unemployed. You have a high rate of people who are there who are illiterate.
Health services are provided by the local municipality. They see about 300 people a month from this mobile clinic. A nursing sister at the clinic says the most widely treated diseases are diabetes, hypertension and mental illness. There are also high levels of HIV. Unplanned pregnancies in this community are significantly high. Most children here suffer from malnutrition. This is a community plagued by a myriad of problems.
You have child-headed family, a lot of them. Now, there's high level of pregnancy that you get, high level of child abuse and all those things. They are caused because of most parents are not staying with them. They are coming either by the weekend or month end.
We spoke to Professor Andre Dievenage at the University of the Northwest to better understand the socio-economic issues in this province.
About 46.3% of the population in the Northwest province are unemployed. You can expect high levels of poverty. You will expect problems within the context of food security. So these problems are real. We are confronted with many developmental challenges at this point. And I think the situation in the province is not that healthy. The official statistics are indicating that about 15.2 million of the South African citizens, currently estimated at about 50 million, are receiving social grants, while we see that only 5.9 million people are contributing in terms of tax. I think in our province, only something like 4.2% of the population are contributing in terms of tax. I don't see it as a sustainable solution, although I know in some areas in South Africa, and you will find them in the Northwest province as well, the cities or towns cannot function without these grants. And people are becoming more and more dependent on this grant system.
So what has led to this sad state of affairs? We'll get some answers after this.
Service delivery protests have become a common sight across the country. These are the growing masses of impoverished people that feel government has failed them. In the Northwest, it's no different. But here, the politics of land reform has further ignited the problem. At the heart of this crisis are the forced evictions of farm workers. This has led to joblessness and hunger.
Fear of the unknown. I think most farmers, they fear the unknown, having thought that maybe the government is either expropriate their land or share with the black farmers who are staying in those farms. They started harassing them, chasing them out. Some will just evict them in the middle of the night. So we are left with no option. That's a nearer village to those farms, then we had to accommodate them.
Louis Meyer is a successful farmer in the Lichtenburg area, about 25 kilometers outside Verdwaal. The Meyers have been farming with maize and cattle in this region for decades. His forefathers were farmers, and his hopes are that one day his sons Nico and Stefan will take over the family farm. Meyer says the region became impoverished when productive farms were handed over to unskilled farmers in the area.
what happens to a lot of these farms that gets given to people, which is the first problem, it gets given to people. There's no physical purchase where this guy's got a track record, he's got money, or he's got the capability to go to bank and borrow money. You know, it physically gets given to somebody. And there's a lot of nepotism happening here. You know, that farms get dished out to families or friends or close relatives.
Not so long ago, the community were totally dependent on the now abandoned farms and agricultural projects in the area. Government is blamed for the failed projects that were the lifeline of the people. Special Assignment investigated a number of agricultural projects in Verdwaal. Here, I'm shown around by the local councillor. We start at this cooperative at Sheila. It's situated a stone's throw away from Verdwaal.
Here we are in the building of the former Sheila cooperative that used to provide living for us as farmers here. If you can see, this was the area where it used to be a hub for farming activities around the area of Sheila, Verdwaal up to, it used to service more than 23 villages, this area. See, this, the number of hectares that we are having around our area as we are part of the maize triangle.
The building has been completely vandalized. All that's left is the abandoned structure, broken glass, and piles of scrap metal.
Unfortunately, our people were not empowered to run the cooperative by then. It was run on behalf of people by the government. So prior to 1994, it was a success because it was run by the government. Then after the downfall of Bophuthatswana, there was an initiative where it was granted to people, but the very same people that they were giving the cooperative to run in terms of corruptions. Because I think that's what affected that cooperative. People just took the money and it collapsed to an extent where you see there are dilapidated buildings here.
The local councillor says this is only one of several failed projects in the area. Professor Dievenage describes this dire situation as the result of years of poor governance in the province.
In some ways, we can say that the Northwest Province is a failed state. Characteristics of this failed province are, amongst others, high levels of corruption, high levels of nepotism, lack of institutional and state capacity. We know about all the province's challenges in terms of delivering proper services to the people: water, sanitation, electricity. We have seen a huge number of service delivery protests in recent times.
Meanwhile, the MEC for Agriculture, Boitumelo Tshweni, says government is in the process of acquiring more land.
The process of buying farms and land by government and allocating it to people for purposes of farming is an ongoing thing. As I speak to you, I think there are about 8 or 9 farmers that we are in the process of taking over, buying and allocating them to emerging farmers. The success rate, I would put it between 70 and 80, success rate.
I can give you the official statistic from a number of sources indicating that between 80 and 90% of land reform processes are ending up in failure.
In defense of government, the MEC for Agriculture says plans are now underway to revive the province's failed projects.
We are aware of such projects, and we are identifying all of them. As I speak, our extension officers are on the ground to follow up on all the projects that needs to be resuscitated, resolving all those group dynamics problems that we experience there and get them back on their feet again.
One of the projects that could benefit the community at Verdwaal are the Springbok Pan silos. They were shut down after a dispute with the bank, which landed in the courts. I visited the silos with Louis Meyer and the local councillor. Meyer says he's interested in getting the production line going again.
Government will have to assist us in this. I approached Standard Bank. Standard Bank was keen and willing. I think, yeah, you need to sell your produce at supported prices because you know, you need to feed people that has got no income. You know, rather than dishing them out parcels, let them come work here and, you know, be able to buy food at say cost price if it's possible. And you know, as a local, as a businessman, it's going to be difficult with you just by yourself, because you need to have enough incentive to make profits to be sustainable for the long term.
This silo could provide much needed jobs and food for about 800 families in Verdwaal. It's only one of 3 silos that have been standing empty in the province.
We did not shut the dam, we took them over. We are in the process of renovating them because we've got plans. The plans of young people running the silos, communities benefiting out of it, creating employment for communities, but also, after assisting young people, assisting women, you can't forget the key role player in agriculture, the farmers themselves. They need to have their own silo as well. Maybe the same way, have a strategic partner. They must also say, in their labor social plan, how does communities around the silos benefit?
The executive mayor, the district mayor, knows, you know, the ex-district mayor, they all receive plans, but they all run up into a brick wall because the silo lies in the hands of the MEC of Agriculture. He has to sign the release on those silos, and he has to give the go-ahead, yet he's keeping the cards against his chest.
Meanwhile, Martha Mopele's day has finally arrived. She's about to become one of more than 15.2 million impoverished South Africans that qualify for a social grant. Authorities fast-tracked her papers after her children died. For security reasons, we are not allowed to film near the pay point, so we wait for her outside. She soon emerges with the grant money. Martha says this money will be used to feed her extended family of 9 people. Sadly, it took a tragedy for her to realize the constitutional rights.